If your defense is getting stretched and giving up open looks, the 1-3-1 zone might be your answer. It's aggressive, disruptive, and perfect for forcing bad passes and rush shots. In this video, I will break down the key positions, rotations, and traps that make the 1-3-1 a game changer. But before I do, let's go into some of the pros and cons of this defense. The best pro is it's aggressive, it forces turnovers, it gets your players motivated. Some of the cons, you can give up easy points underneath the basket just because of the way this thing is set up. But if you're doing everything around the basket correctly and you're trapping appropriately, you should be okay. You can also use this at the wrong time. You don't want to use this defense at the end of the game when you're already up. When you're at the end of a game, you want to, play in nice and tight in a zone or a man defense and keep them from getting inside. So this could be a bad defense to use at the end of the game when there's just a few minutes left and you're already up by a lot. So I'm going to jump into positions first and foremost. There's 5 positions in a 1-3-1. You want to have your you can really use anybody you want in this, but I'll kind of explain what each player does, and that way you'll know what your weaks and strengths are for your teammates or your players, and you can put them where the appropriate spot is. The 4, basically, their job is to corral the offense into one side of the court, okay? And I always use this concept no matter what defense I'm running. I always want the ball on one side of the court, and that's what I tell my players. So, if they're coming down here and they're setting up at the top, that's not what we want that 4 to do. We want it to be someone that has some basketball IQ that can get the players over on the sideline, okay, no matter which side. All right, that's what that number 4 is for. The next position that you probably want to pick, or maybe even pick this position first, this person, you want them to be quick enough to where they can get from corner to corner without a problem. They can guard this entire spot without any issues, okay? So it's going to be an athletic player. It can be someone that knows how to trap, how to cut off the baseline, but they can move from corner to corner, and they won't get tired, okay? I like to put my tall player here, maybe my slower player, and their job is just to keep that ball. Obviously they're going to be rotating a lot, but not as much as the number 1. And this person can be just a tall player, so they can have their hands up and they can intercept passes, into the high post. And they can also keep players out of the high post. So that's big. And then these other 2, just really they're going to help with trapping. So those can just be your last 2 players that you pick. Okay, so now that we understand positions and we understand rule number 1, which is never, ever let the ball handler or the ball just be in the middle of the court anywhere, okay? We don't ever want the ball to get in the middle of the court. So we want to always use this player to kind of corral them down into the sidelines. That's super important. All right, so let's talk about the trapping spots. So some of the trapping spots that you need to know are going to be, here, right, on both sides of the court. These are really the spots that you want your the ball to be in. So, how does that work, right? Obviously I said we don't want the ball handler to be in the middle. We want to kind of get that ball handler over here. And a lot of times, it's difficult. So it's difficult to, get them right into this spot, but you want to, if you're going to play an extended 1-3-1, which is what I'm showing you here, you want to have, that ball handler get trapped. You can get them trapped, up here when they come in. That way they can't backtrack out. Or you can just kind of get them out wherever you feel comfortable. And essentially you're trapping, okay? And when I tell my players to trap, I want them, their goal in their mind is to get the ball handler to pick the ball up. Because as you know, when a ball handler has the ball, they have 3 options, right? Their 3 options are dribble, pass, or shoot. They're not going to shoot from here. They could pass, and they could dribble. So if they're already dribbling up to this spot and they pick the ball up, now they only they're not a triple threat anymore. They're really a single threat. They can only pass. I'd love for them to shoot from here. They're not going to do that. So they have, there's only one option, and that's the pass. And that's really when we start coming in, right? Like that's when our 5 is adjusting out, and that's when our 1 is here, and everybody just kind of rotates over to where we're covering down on one side of the court. So you have an option here for the weak side guard. You could do really whatever you want here, and I can only say, you're probably not going to get a diagonal pass, but you might. So, that player, you want that player to have that option. It's just you got to be careful, because if you go to pick that off, I would only want that person launching if the ball gets passed over there. But if it does get passed over there, and, you got a lot of open areas. So you got to be careful with what this player up here does. But that is a decision that you'll have to make as a coach. But hopefully, if you practice this enough, this player will know what to do. But it will take off, and also your 5 is kind of helping out with that too, right? So, but I oftentimes feel like the diagonal pass is going to be a scary pass for this player. So, just that too. That's kind of they're kind of the safety in a way, right? They got to be able to get in a bunch of different places. So really, the where the pass is typically going to go is it's going to go down in there in this corner, and I should mention too, like your 1 is going to stay down here. He's not necessarily going to block this pass coming in, because really we don't mind the ball being there. Ball gets down here. Now what you have is another trapping situation where you're trying to use that corner. Now, if you'll notice, you have more play here. You have the baseline and the sideline. So this, this 2-person trap really becomes 4. You got 4 sides. So you can really do some damage here, and that's really what you want to do in the 1-3-1 is you just want to make this thing funnel down into this spot, then into that corner, and then just trap. And then you hope you're done. You hope that you get a turnover of some sort, okay? But do remember, they can dribble here. So, if he gets that ball pass, he has 3 things he can do. He can dribble, he can shoot, or he can pass. So oftentimes when this trap happens in the corner, they'll be a triple threat, and that's why it's just important to trap quick. They could drive into the baseline, and that's why that 1's just got to be there quick to set the trap, and the 3 has to move fast to get there. The 5's going to come down. Remember, they're worried about that high post there. We don't want the pass into the high post, so they're there. And then of course the 2's going to drop down and be here, and the 4 over in this area, right? So, if you, as you can see here, right, like, I mean, there's really not a lot of options for passing. I mean, obviously this person could come up and cut it off, but you're gonna have defensive players here really intimidating that pass. So that's how it works. Now, let's say the ball's pass back up over here, and they actually do get the ball reversed. The same thing's going to happen, right? Like everybody's just kind of rotating, just like any zone. But when the ball's in the middle, and I call this the off-limit spot, the 4's really got to do a good job of getting the ball back over to the side. And one thing I like to, and I'll drill this a lot, in any of my defenses, I will drill this to where they're not putting so much pressure on them, because you can really get beat off the dribble if you get too close. So I help them, give them that space, and then just kind of like pushing them in the right direction. And then when we get into that spot, boom, it's another trap. It's quick, right? And everybody's rotating over. So that's what it looks like. Now we're trying to get a ball trap here. Force the dead ball, bring it down to a double threat, really a single threat. If they can get the ball passed out to the corner, now we're doing the same thing. We're trapping. And we're just trying to create that chaos that the 1-3-1 does. So again, I'm going to say the off limits areas are always going to be, anywhere up at the top, anywhere over here in the paint, anywhere over here at the top. We always want the ball in the corners or in any of these trapping areas that I have here. So that's the 1-3-1. If you're looking for a defense, you're just not sure which one to use, this one's great for really creating chaos, but just remember the timing of it is everything. You don't want to throw this in at the end of the game. If you're looking for a bunch of zone defenses that to pick from, I'm going to put a video right here on the screen that you can click on, and that one will help you kind of come up with which zone defense you want to use. I have a few examples in the video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe for more videos just like this.